There's something here that almost nobody has linked together yet. Back in April 2025, Meghan Markle's own spokesperson issued a public denial. Not a "we'd like to clarify" statement, not a carefully worded explanation, a straightforward, unqualified denial. They told major outlets including The Guardian, The Daily Beast, and The New York Post, quote, "The Sussexes do not use their HRH titles." That was on Tuesday. Just 24 hours later, another source from the very same Sussex operation told the New York Post something entirely different. This time, they confirmed that Meghan does, in fact, retain and use the title, just, according to them, not for commercial purposes. Two statements. Same PR machine, one day apart. You might be thinking, okay, that's messy, but it's only a disagreement over a title. Stay with me. Because during that exact week, while that denial was falling apart in public view, Meghan's lifestyle brand, As Ever, had its website fully operational and selling products to customers. Raspberry jam, available to anyone with a credit card. And on the official product page, in plain black and white text, the brand described itself as being created by Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. A commercial website. Products for sale. The spokesperson says the title isn't used commercially. The website uses the title commercially. So how exactly are those two things supposed to fit together? Reports suggest Meghan Markle is increasingly concerned that Prince William could eventually move to strip her of the Duchess of Sussex title once he becomes king. And honestly, if I were Meghan, I'd probably be concerned too, because she continues to use the title. It's on the website. It's attached to the products. It's part of the branding behind the candles, the jams, and everything else being sold. Meanwhile, William, the man who may one day sign the document capable of ending all of it, appeared on Britain's biggest commercial radio show only weeks earlier, and managed to spend 3 full hours on air without mentioning his brother's name a single time. By the time we reach the legal mechanism later in this story, the same mechanism King Charles has already tested with Prince Andrew, you'll understand why every business partner Meghan has worked with is probably having very quiet conversations with their legal teams right now. Very specific conversations. And nobody seems willing to say that part out loud. That changes today. Let's be honest. Royal drama has surrounded this family for years. So why does this moment, right now in 2026, feel different? Why isn't this simply another cycle of speculation that disappears by the end of the week? Because 3 separate developments happened at exactly the same time. And when 3 major events converge like this, it stops looking like coincidence. It starts looking like a case being built. First, Tom Bower released Betrayal on March 26, 2026. If you're familiar with Bower's track record, you'll understand why that matters. This is the journalist who exposed Robert Maxwell's pension fund scandal, revealing hundreds of millions taken from employees. Maxwell sued him. Before the case could conclude, Maxwell died, and the fraud was later confirmed exactly as Bower had described. He wrote extensively about Mohammed Al-Fayed. He faced threats, legal challenges, and public attacks. None of them succeeded because the underlying material held up under scrutiny. According to the New Statesman, Bower's investigative philosophy can be summarized in 3 words: find the victims. In Betrayal, serving and former senior aides connected to both the King and the Prince of Wales provided a statement that may end up being one of the most consequential observations made about the monarchy this year. The quote reads, "William was taking no prisoners once he was crowned king. His brother might well find no mercy for himself or Meghan." That isn't an internet rumor. It's sourced, legally reviewed, published, and available in bookstores. Meghan's team dismissed the book as a deranged conspiracy. But Maxwell said similar things. So did Al-Fayed, and so did others. The criticism changes. The outcomes rarely do. Then came the second development. Tom Sykes, who has spent more than 2 decades covering the royal family for the Daily Beast, published a report in November 2024 outlining what he described as William's plan regarding title removal. He didn't speak vaguely. He detailed the legal route. He identified the mechanism. He discussed the timeline. Neither Buckingham Palace nor Kensington Palace issued a denial. No lawsuit followed. No correction appeared, just silence. And then there's the third development, the finances. According to Bauer's reporting, maintaining the Sussex lifestyle costs roughly $3 million annually. At the same time, income streams appear to be under pressure. Netflix, Spotify, lifestyle products. The revenue, in Bauer's words, is drying up. And the numbers we'll look at later suggest that assessment may not be far off. This isn't celebrity gossip anymore. It's a financial issue, a legal issue, a structural issue. One that happens to be packaged behind cashmere sweaters and jars of raspberry spread. And at the center of everything sits a title that ultimately belongs to the crown, not to Meghan, and one that could theoretically be taken away the moment a certain man wears the crown himself. Revelation number 1. The spokesperson may have unintentionally built the case against her. On April 28, 2025, Meghan appeared on entrepreneur Jamie Kern-Lima's podcast. During the interview, Lima showed viewers a gift basket Meghan had sent her approximately a year earlier. Attached was a printed card. Lima read the message aloud. The card was signed, "With compliments of HRH, the Duchess of Sussex." Within hours, journalists contacting the Sussex operation received the same response. Clear, direct, no qualifications. The Sussexes do not use their HRH titles. Then just one day later, another source connected to the same operation confirmed the exact opposite. Yes, they still retain the styles. Yes, Meghan used it. But according to the explanation that followed, it was personal. It was a gift. And under the agreement, they supposedly do not use the title commercially. Here's where things get interesting. A former palace courtier spoke to the Daily Beast and stated that the Sandringham Summit Agreement, the 2020 exit arrangement, was crystal clear. According to that account, Harry and Meghan agreed not to use the HRH styles at all. Not commercially, not publicly, not privately, not in any capacity whatsoever. And the official Buckingham Palace statement from January 2020, which remains available on the royal website today, says exactly this. The Sussexes will not use their HRH titles as they are no longer working members of the royal family. So let's review what happened. A gift basket was sent using the title after an agreement that allegedly prohibited its use altogether. The spokesperson initially denied it happened. Then, within 24 hours, the same operation effectively acknowledged that it did. That isn't a public relations mistake. That's a documented contradiction with timestamps attached. And William's camp reportedly responded with a single, remarkably direct assessment. There is no way King William will stand for this. The titles will simply be removed when he is king. A way will be found. That's not being framed as a warning. It's being framed as an inevitability. But even that contradiction may not be the most important part of the story, because what's currently sitting on Meghan's commercial website is much harder to explain away as a personal gift. And frankly, we're not dealing with a situation that has always been handled brilliantly. We've all watched the public missteps. We've seen the messaging problems. We've seen the endless cycle of explanations. At one point, Harry and Meghan positioned themselves as people who had escaped the royal system and wanted to build something positive outside of it. The challenge is that the execution has often looked chaotic. Consider this. According to reports, they've cycled through roughly 11 PR advisors in 5 years. That number alone suggests something isn't operating smoothly behind the scenes. Which brings us to revelation number 2. The website may be the breach that nobody wants to discuss openly. The As Ever website is active right now. It sells raspberry preserves, decorative flower sprinkles, an $89 bottle of Napa Valley champagne, and a garden tea collection priced at $255. And on the official brand page, visitors find the following description. As Ever is more than a brand, it's a love language created by Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. Read that again. Created by Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. Not in an interview, not on a greeting card, not in a private exchange, on a commercial storefront, on a page connected directly to products being sold. The Sussex position has generally been that HRH and Duchess of Sussex are separate matters. The HRH style, they argue, was the element affected by the agreement. The Duchess title itself, they maintain, was never surrendered. But the former courtier quoted by the Daily Beast doesn't appear to make that distinction. Neither does the language reportedly coming from William's camp. They discuss the titles as part of a broader package. Now here's the detail that really stands out because it suggests the lawyers may have anticipated this issue long ago. The as-ever trademark wasn't filed under Duchess of Sussex. It was filed through corporate entities such as Cobblestone Lane, LLC, and 2022 Trademarks, LLC. The business structure was separated from the title, deliberately, in advance. The trademark can survive title removal. The branding attached to the title may not. Think carefully about what that means. Consumers aren't simply buying jam from Meghan Markle. The entire marketing narrative is tied to royal association. That's what helped the first as-ever launch sell out so quickly. That's what attracted hundreds of thousands of followers to the American Riviera Orchard account before products were even announced. If the title disappears, a very different question emerges. Who exactly is the customer now? And the viewing figures may already provide part of the answer. Those numbers are not flattering. Revelation number 3. The Netflix data tells a story that the press releases don't. Let's look at the timeline. December 2022. The Harry and Meghan documentary arrives on Netflix. Within its first 3 days, it generated 81.6 million viewing hours, the biggest documentary launch in Netflix history at that time. By the end of its first full week, another 97.7 million hours had been added. You remember the headlines. You remember the attention. The coverage was impossible to avoid. But what was viewers' actual interest? At its core, the documentary revolved around a royal title under pressure. A duke and duchess stepping away from one of the world's most recognizable institutions and explaining their reasons. The title itself was central to the story. People weren't simply watching two individuals, they were watching a royal controversy unfold in real time. Now move forward to March 2025. Love, Meghan arrives on the same platform. Same partnership, same star, different premise, cooking demonstrations, garden gatherings, beekeeping, lifestyle content from Montecito. The first week engagement reached 12.6 million viewing hours. According to Netflix engagement data covering January through June 2025, the show ranked only 10th globally during its launch period and eventually sat hundreds of places down the overall rankings. Several older programs outperformed it. Even children's programming generated stronger numbers in some comparisons. Harry's Polo series reportedly drew approximately 500,000 views and landed deep within Netflix's rankings. The decline is impossible to ignore. Over 3 years, viewership fell dramatically, and one major factor changed. In 2022, audiences were tuning in to a royal story. In 2025, they were tuning into lifestyle content. The royal connection carried the attention. The title carried the attention, not the recipes, not the gardening, not the jam. And if that title disappears, the equation doesn't improve. It becomes even harder, because we're now approaching the legal consequences. And once we get there, you'll understand why having Duchess of Sussex displayed on a commercial website may be much more than a branding decision. In contract law, this becomes something much more precise. Stay with me. Revelation number 4. The biographer whose subjects rarely come out on top. Meghan is an agent of poison. She has an ability to damage relationships. And when she builds relationships, it's almost always for her own benefit, her own objectives. She's ruthless. If she believes something serves her interests, then she believes it's good for the business. Tom Bower has written 27 books. Over the years, powerful people have sued him, threatened him, and attempted to push him out of public discourse. The outcomes tend to follow a familiar pattern. Robert Maxwell sued him. Maxwell died before the case reached trial. The fraud allegations were later confirmed almost exactly as Bower had reported. Mohammed Al-Fayed launched legal actions. None succeeded. Subsequent investigations independently validated many of the claims. When Bower released Revenge in 2020, Meghan's supporters and media allies pushed back aggressively. No lawsuit followed. When Betrayal was serialized by The Times in March 2026, a Sussex spokesperson dismissed the work as a deranged conspiracy and accused Bauer of constructing increasingly elaborate theories about people he had never met and did not know personally. Again, no lawsuit. Now think carefully about that decision. Bauer has repeatedly stated that his books go through extensive legal review before publication. As he once explained publicly, "I have very good lawyers. More importantly, I make sure what I write is true." And that's important because defamation law works in a very specific way. The moment you sue someone over what they've written about you, you open the door to discovery. Documents, depositions, sworn testimony, internal communications, you effectively finance a deeper investigation into your own affairs. So Meghan's team chose public statements instead of court filings. Once again, the same route Maxwell took, the same route Al-Fayed took. A familiar pattern with different names attached. Then there's historian Andrew Loney, whose book entitled was published in November 2025. Loney went even further than Bauer when speaking publicly. When asked directly what Prince William might do regarding Prince Andrew once he becomes king, Loney answered, "William will deal with Andrew, and he'll probably deal with Harry as well." In another interview, he expanded on that point. According to Loney, William's view is that the situation has become embarrassing and that the institution risks becoming an object of ridicule. 3 biographers, 6 months. A remarkably similar conclusion, and not a single lawsuit in response. At some point, coincidence stops being a convincing explanation. It starts looking like a pattern. Revelation number 5. The test run has already happened, and almost nobody is discussing it. October 2025. King Charles removed Prince Andrew's HRH style and princely status through letters patent. No parliamentary vote, no courtroom battle, no years-long legal process, one royal instrument, one executive action. The change was made. At the time, media coverage framed it as one of the most significant royal developments in years. What received far less attention was the precedent it created. Because every time commentators discuss the possibility of William removing titles, they tend to frame it as future speculation, a hypothetical, a possibility, maybe one day, perhaps, but the mechanism is no longer theoretical. It has already been used, and it was used against one of the most senior royals imaginable. Prince Andrew held the Duke of York title for decades. He was born into the institution, a lifelong royal. Yet one document changed everything. Gone. William doesn't need to create a new legal strategy. He doesn't need to test an unproven process. The blueprint already exists. King Charles handed him one. And remember Tom Sykes's reporting, the same report that neither palace publicly challenged. According to that account, William's approach would rely on the very same mechanism. Letters patent. Early in his reign. At that point, the question stops being whether such action is possible. The real question becomes timing. Because every thread we've followed in this story appears to point toward the same destination. Now let me move away from the legal arguments for a moment. Away from the trademarks. Away from the viewership data. Away from the conflicting statements and financial calculations. Because beneath all of it sits a much simpler story. And it's probably the one that hurts the most. 2 brothers. The last time William and Harry appeared together publicly, without controversy hanging over them, they were children. 2 boys in dark suits walking behind their mother's coffin. I'm not bringing that up for dramatic effect. I'm bringing it up because it's one of the few facts in this entire story that carries no legal implication and no financial consequence. It's simply true, and it provides context for everything that followed. Earlier this year, William appeared on Heart Breakfast. More than 4 million listeners tuned in. The station broadcast live from the Isles of Scilly for the first time in its history. And William spoke openly. He talked about his daughter being a huge Taylor Swift fan. He joked about his youngest child leaving jam-covered fingerprints across the back of the family car. He unintentionally confirmed details about his eldest child's future schooling, something royal reporters had been trying to verify for months. He spoke warmly about Catherine's recovery from cancer. He called her an amazing wife, an amazing mother, someone the family couldn't manage without. He discussed football. He assessed Aston Villa's prospects. He even weighed in on the long-running cream versus jam debate, citing his grandmother as the ultimate authority on the matter. And throughout all of it, across hours of conversation, one thing stood out. He never mentioned Harry. He told an audience of more than 4 million people that the song helping him through a difficult day is You Got the Love by Candy Staton. Across 3 hours of conversation, filled with warmth, stories, and personal reflections, there was one person he never mentioned: his brother. He spoke about his grandmother, the late Queen, the woman who, according to numerous royal biographers, spent years privately preparing William for the responsibilities of the crown, teaching him what the role demanded and what it would ultimately cost. Yet he never once said Harry's name. Not once. He didn't mention Meghan. He didn't mention his 6-year-old nephew. He didn't mention his 4-year-old niece. Children who, regardless of everything else, remain descendants of his late mother. That silence matters. Because according to Roya Nika, royal editor for the Sunday Times and widely regarded as one of the journalists most trusted by senior royals, William has a long memory. Her description was straightforward. He holds grudges, he chooses sides, and when someone chooses the opposite side, he remembers it. He remembers the Oprah interview. He remembers the disagreement over the bridesmaids before the wedding. He remembers the meeting at Kensington Palace following the honeymoon, the conversation that was intended to repair relationships. According to sources cited by Bauer, that was the meeting where Meghan allegedly told William to remove his finger from her face. And Harry, according to those accounts, said nothing. Perhaps that silence never left the room. Perhaps years later, it simply reappeared in a different form. Harry's silence at Kensington Palace became William's silence on Heart Breakfast, one echo answering another, years apart. And somewhere in Montecito, a 6-year-old boy named Archie holds titles that some commentators believe his uncle may one day seek to remove, before Archie is even old enough to fully understand what those titles meant. Reports continue to circulate suggesting that William intends to review not only Harry and Meghan's titles, but potentially those associated with their children as well. If those reports are accurate, the implications go beyond protocol. They go beyond legal documents. They reach into questions of identity, inheritance, and family. Because what Meghan once described as a birthright would effectively disappear. And that's the part of this story that legal analysis struggles to fully capture. At its core, this isn't only about contracts, it's about people. But let's talk about the contracts anyway, because when most people hear the phrase title removal, they imagine ceremonies, traditions, and constitutional procedures. What they don't think about is money, real agreements, real legal obligations. Every major commercial arrangement Meghan entered after January 2020 was entered into under the identity of Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. The Netflix partnership, widely reported as being worth around $100 million, was publicly announced under the branding of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Even the August 2025 extension announcement continued using those same titles. Archewell Productions has consistently been marketed alongside the Sussex identity. The ASEver website still incorporates that identity into its brand messaging today, and that's where contract law becomes relevant. Most major entertainment agreements include representations and warranties. These provisions require parties to confirm who they are, their authority to enter the agreement, and any significant facts that influence the deal. For Meghan, the title wasn't incidental. It wasn't a footnote. It was central to the brand. It was part of the value proposition, part of what audiences recognized, part of what business partners believed they were investing in. Now imagine a scenario where letters patent removed that title. The individual who signed agreements as Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, is now legally Meghan Markle, a private citizen with no formal royal designation. At that point, every legal department involved begins asking the same question. Does the identity described in the original agreement still exist in the form that was presented when the contract was signed? That's not speculation. It's a routine legal review question, the sort of discussion that happens quietly in conference rooms long before anyone makes a public statement. And then there's the trademark issue. It's the detail I keep returning to because it reveals something important. The as-ever trademark wasn't filed under Duchess of Sussex. It was filed through corporate entities including Cobblestone Lane LLC and 2022 Trademarks LLC. In other words, The legal structure was insulated from the title. That wasn't accidental, it was deliberate. And frankly, it was smart legal planning. The lawyers clearly understood that titles can be vulnerable, so they protected the intellectual property separately. The trademark survives. But the trademark isn't the same thing as the public appeal attached to it. The trademark isn't what caused products to sell out within an hour. The trademark isn't what attracted hundreds of thousands of social media followers before a single item was available for purchase. People weren't following a preserves company. They were following a duchess. The audience response reflected that reality. And the Netflix numbers reinforce it. The trademark remains intact. The reason many people cared in the first place may not. Now let's put the financial picture on the table. The Netflix equity partnership connected to As Ever reportedly concluded in March 2026. The broader production arrangement shifted into a first-look deal. In Hollywood terms, that means Netflix gets the first opportunity to consider projects, but it doesn't necessarily mean guaranteed upfront funding. Spotify is already gone. The Archewell Foundation was reorganized in late 2025 under a fiscal sponsorship model, a restructuring that reportedly resulted in staff reductions. Meanwhile, Bauer's reporting suggests that maintaining the Sussex lifestyle requires approximately $3 million annually. And according to those same sources, major income streams from Netflix, Spotify, and retail ventures have all been under increasing pressure. Then came the HRH controversy, the gift basket, the contradictory statements, the 24-hour reversal. And from the perspective of William's supporters, that incident provided something very specific: a documented timeline, a public record, a sequence of statements in which one Sussex source denied usage entirely and another appeared to acknowledge it shortly afterward. If the former courtier's interpretation of the Sandringham agreement is correct, namely that all use was prohibited under any circumstances, then those public statements become more than a communications problem. They become evidence, not necessarily of intent, but of contradiction. And contradictions matter. The mechanism has already been tested through Andrew. The financial pressures continue to mount. The disputed incident exists on the public record. The biographies have been written, the reporting has been published, and every one of those threads appears to be leading toward the same question. The palaces haven't publicly denied any of it. William is waiting. And the title Meghan has built so much of her commercial identity around comes with an expiration date she doesn't personally control. Here's where I land on all of this. This stopped being a story about whether William likes his brother years ago. We're far beyond that stage now. In my view, William made his decision long before Oprah, long before Spare, long before the Netflix documentaries and interviews. He made it in that room at Kensington Palace, the day Harry stood there and, according to the accounts we've discussed, said nothing. Everything that followed has looked less like indecision and more like patience. William managing the distance between a decision already made and the day he finally possesses the authority to act on it. Meghan built a business empire around a title that doesn't belong to her. It belongs to the crown. And eventually, inevitably, the crown becomes William. The designation that appears on the Jam website, the promotional materials, the brand descriptions, and the partnership announcements, Duchess of Sussex, isn't a personal possession. It isn't an identity she owns outright. It's a title granted through royal letters patent. And what is granted through that mechanism can be altered through that same mechanism. That's the critical point. She doesn't own it. She's borrowing it. And the man who may one day decide its future spent 3 hours on Britain's largest commercial radio show talking about virtually every important person in his life, except the people currently benefiting from that arrangement. He's simply waiting to inherit the keys. The real tragedy here, and I use that word carefully rather than emotionally, is that much of this appears entirely avoidable. If the 2020 agreement had been followed without controversy, if the gift basket had simply been signed Meghan instead of HRH, the Duchess of Sussex, if the spokesperson had not denied the usage one day and acknowledged it the next, if the website had described itself as being created by Meghan and stopped there. But none of those things happened. The contradiction exists. The website exists. The sales platform exists. The viewership numbers exist. The biographers' reporting exists. And despite all the public criticism surrounding those claims, none of it has been tested through legal action. So here's the part I want you to think about. William mentioned his wife. He mentioned all three of his children. He spoke about his late grandmother. He told millions of listeners that the song helping him through difficult days is You Got the Love by Candy Staton. Yet there were 4 names he never spoke. Not once. 3 separate biographers have offered explanations for why. 2 royal households have declined to publicly reject those explanations, and 1 legal mechanism, letters patent, has already demonstrated that it can be used. It's there, available, proven, waiting. Meanwhile, Meghan's commercial brand remains tied to the one element in this entire story whose future William may ultimately control. So I'll leave you with the question. The Sussex spokesperson denied HRH usage on one day. The following day, a different source effectively confirmed it. The As Ever website continues to use Duchess of Sussex within its commercial branding as you watch this. And if the Sandringham agreement truly prohibited all use, not merely commercial use, not merely public use, but any use whatsoever, and if the former palace courtier's description of that agreement is accurate, then the issue extends far beyond a gift basket. The website itself becomes part of the discussion. And if William's advisors are examining the same agreement described by that courtier, they may conclude that the alleged breach wasn't isolated. They may view it as ongoing, documented, publicly traceable, and potentially measurable in commercial terms. So I want your verdict, because that's the question at the center of all this. If William eventually signs letters patent affecting those titles, and based on everything we've covered, many people believe that possibility remains very real, does Meghan have a persuasive argument that her business activities were conducted in good faith? Or did the spokesperson's 24-hour reversal already create the answer her critics are pointing to? Tell me what you think. Because while the public debates it online, there are likely legal teams and palace advisors examining the same questions behind closed doors. And so far, Meghan's camp hasn't produced a single explanation that completely resolves the contradiction.